pleasure to be here, man.
So, how have you been spending your time? So, first of all, just let everyone know about your channel because I find that really fascinating in terms of the interviews that you've been conducting. So, yeah, what's that all about?
Yeah, so I've got a YouTube channel called Cricket Life Stories. So basically, I interview players, coaches, those associated with the sport, kind of finding out a little bit about their journey. Also, in some pieces, I do training pieces as well. So yeah, man, just been doing that since November last year. Having fun with it, met some great
Yeah.
people, and yeah. For those who haven't checked it out, yeah, let me know when you do, and just drop me a comment. I'm happy to come back to you guys.
So that's fascinating because I've kept a track on that actually, and you've actually had some interesting guests on. And I feel like there are quite a few football channels out there who do these sorts of things about getting people on and just conversing with them at length. But I haven't really seen a cricketing-based channel in that sense. Was that one of your primary inspirations, primary draws for creating a channel like that?
Oh, look, I've been involved in different sports previously. I've done a lot of writing for like a UK broadcaster for Sky Sports Boxing. But cricket's always been my main passion, and I always tell anyone, always go with what's your passion because
Hmm.
this is like a long game. If you want it to kind of succeed, you have to have a passion for it. So cricket is my number one sport. Played it at a okay level when I was younger, and then just wanted to carry on and kind of do something that I enjoyed. So cricket was an avenue. I never thought of it as like somewhere where there was a gap in the market, because even if you mention football, it might be seem saturated, but people
Hmm.
do content in different ways. There's always a way in. Cricket for me was just a path I chose because I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fair. And plus, so I mean, there's something I really find intriguing here is that even if you have similar coaches on, because you have a passion for the sport, you can still draw different connections and different viewpoints, which would be which would be difficult, let's say, for a person who isn't as passionate about the sport. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. And the thing is with these guests, they're elite in their field.
Yeah.
So if you position the questions correctly, they will always deliver. So it's up to you as an interviewer, or if you're a script writer or whatever. A lot of people ask me this. If you position the questioning correctly, you can get basically whatever you want out of them, which is then valuable for the viewer, the listener, etc. So, as I said, so you can get different pieces of insight, inspiration from different coaches, and to talk about their mindset, their philosophies, etc. So that's how I approach it.
Neil, so that's interesting because I'm growing as a podcaster myself as well, and this is something that often crosses my mind. Like, how should I actually just interview people or just have a conversation with people? Because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and one of the things I generally take away is that as the host, you shouldn't be the one who's always talking. It should be positioned in a way where you can actually draw, as you were talking about, knowledge that you are actually looking for, but then the question has to be appropriated in that sort of way. So, what's your approach in forming those questions or in presenting yourself?
So going on your first point, I would always say you should do what you do. So your style is your style. As I mentioned about football, there's a lot of channels out there, but people like even forget sports. There's a lot of baking channels out there,
Hmm.
fitness.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean people don't try it, people don't come in and people don't succeed. You just got to do you. So
Yep.
whether that means that you talk a bit more at like say upbeat level, or you kind of say a few words and then let the guest go away. It's whatever you do, whatever your style is. So that's number one for me. My style is my style. I've never tried to copy anyone. Your style is your style. I think you should always follow that path. In terms of positioning it correctly, always research your guest. It's one thing that I've learned from mentors, etc. You should always kind of go into the interview knowing what you want to get out of them,
Yeah.
and that's the key, I think. So research their thing. When I mean also research, you also research on trends that are online and kind of see what people actually want to listen to. So you don't want to get a coach and then, for example, and 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 they talk about their favorite pet, for example. Some people might like that, but really
Yeah,
they want to know in a game situation, for example, why do they make this decision, or what is it like to drop a player? Do you
right.
see where I'm coming from?
Hmm. No, that's really interesting, and I mean, I just hope we have more and more of these conversations in the future because, as I mentioned, that probably you're probably well versed at that. You may see that there are probably more YouTube channels in that sense, or channels in terms of cricket. But yeah, I feel it's totally a growing thing. But just sort of circling back, what were your early memories with cricket? Like, how did it start off? Like, I grew up in India, so the thing with me was that like everyone else, we played cricket in the backyard, and then I had my memories with my father bowling at me. But was it something different for you? What were your early takes on cricket?
Yeah, so I'm obviously from a Indian heritage as well. So cricket is in the blood. Completely understand. Obviously, I go out to India a few times as well, so I understand the whole cricket being a religion. My first
Yeah,
memory of
yeah.
the sport, like my dad took me to Lord's 1996, England, India, Dravid and Ganguly's debut. So that was
Oh
my
wow.
first match I went. So Ganguly got 100, Dravid 95. So he just missed out. So yeah, so that was the first match I ever went to. But look, I grew up with a park near me. Always used to have the bat and ball in hand. So from a young age, it was always a passion for me. Played in every school level group, played club cricket, had trials at Middlesex. Never kind of went for me in that aspect. I'm happy to say I probably wasn't good enough as well. But also, studies took over, and the
Hmm.
path never followed. So, but it's always been through me through my whole life. Follow the sport. I can watch a test match now and watch.
Yeah.
I can watch every single ball and not even get bored. I'm that kind of guy. So yeah, so it's in the blood. So yeah, it's always been there.
Yeah. Do you feel that because growing up, correct me if I'm wrong here, but growing up in the UK, like in terms of India, as you rightfully put it, it's almost, if it's not a religion, it's almost like a religion in that sense. And even if you may have an inkling for another sport, cricket would be the other sport that you play along with that, if that makes sense. But at least because I study in the UK as well, and at least from what I've observed there is that cricket isn't the biggest sport there. So football is the biggest sport in my opinion there. Maybe rugby comes after that, and there are a wide variety of sports that people generally like to indulge themselves in. So was there this opportunity as well that there were other sports that drew your attention, or was it always because you are from an Indian heritage that cricket was going to be something that drew your eye because your parents used to watch it, maybe, or they used to keep talking about it?
Yeah, so there's obviously, as you said, like in the UK, football is the number one sport. Look, I'm a massive football fan myself. I go
Yeah,
to loads of games a year, so football is there as well. At school, I went to a school that was really big on rugby. So for like
right.
10 years, I played at a good level for rugby. So once you play it, you kind of like get involved in terms of watching on TV, going to a few matches as well. So it's always been like a range of sports. As I said, I did a lot of writing on a professional level for boxing as well. So boxing's been a passion
Mm,
for me
mm,
the last like 7, 8 years as well. And I do a bit of training on that side just to keep fit. But cricket, just not because of anything else. It is the one that I would class as number one in my mind. Um, Not really. I don't know. It's probably got to do a little bit to do with family as well because it's just in me
yeah,
from a young
yeah.
age. But as I said, I've been exposed to different sports as well, and cricket is the one that would, if anyone asked me, it's definitely my number one.
Right. So you talked about attending Dravid and Kamli's debut, but who were your inspirations growing up? And as you mentioned, you trialed at Middlesex and these other counties. But was it that always you really wanted to pursue, let's say, a professional career playing cricket as a cricketer, and then maybe if it wasn't possible going into journalism, or did you see that maybe journalism is a better path for me earlier on only?
Look, so in terms of my inspiration, I'm a left-hander bowler and batsman, so I always looked at the left-handers. So even though this might sound controversial for having an Indian heritage, but I always used to like Wasim because
Right. Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Like at that, from a young age, he was probably the one. Growing up, loved watching Trescothick bat to left-hander. Yuvraj, I would always say, is my favorite batsman of all time as a left-hander. I just
Mm-hmm.
loved him. And then more recently, someone like Mitchell Johnson, I just, he gets a little bit of controversy, a little bit of stick for at times spraying it around, but at his peak, um, he was incredible. And then your other question about, uh, you know, for me, look, when I was a youngster, like when I mean like young, like 7, 8, 9, 10, I thought, yo, I want to play for England. But
Yeah.
then you then you then you realize like 13, 14, 15, you're not good enough. So
Mm-hmm.
look, I chose different paths in terms of study. I didn't study journalism. I studied
Right.
history.
Right.
History, I think, gave me a good base in terms of research writing.
Mm.
So and then and then opportunities. I was looking at different fields, tried a little different things out as well, and journalism, and especially this kind of YouTube thing I'm going at the moment is just something that I really wanted to pursue as a passion,
Yeah.
um, and just go for it from there.
So touching upon the left-handers thing, and you're better well versed with this than me. But Harsha Bogle really talks about this romanticism that people have with left-handers. It's just the way they bat. I don't know. It's probably because there are fewer left-handers than right-handers, so we sort of associate them to be more aesthetically pleasing when they are batting. Do you have a theory to that, or is it just us
Yeah, a
romanticizing
lot of people
some
say that.
cricketers over others?
Yeah, a lot of people say that, and also maybe you also hear that in stuff like football.
Yeah, yeah,
Against sort of a left footer. It's
yeah.
probably because
Ozil
you
and
don't.
stuff. Yeah.
It's probably because you don't see it as much. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I think of it. That's my theory behind. It's just because there's so many right-handers out there. It's probably like 15% lefties, and when they do hit a different shot, it is different. And because they can do it in a nice way, people will say it's cool. But that's probably because they don't see enough of it. That's my.
Right, right. Do you sort of, I don't know, it's probably a very subjective question, and it's all right if you don't want to answer it in that sense. Probably very absurd. But do you have, let's say, this ideology that cricket should be played in a certain way? So the England Cricket Board have come out recently, and they've changed their philosophy of playing cricket, and they want to play front foot cricket and always want to be on the attack. Do you have a certain way, or let's say, an ethical way of playing cricket, so that one way is better than the other?
But in terms of ethics, when you just first led into that question, I always thought about the thing that came into my head was the spirit of the game. Because the
Right,
spirit
right,
of the game, I think, should always be upheld
right.
because cricket is a unique sport in that aspect. In terms of whether it be attacking, defensive, more conservative way of playing,
Mm, mm,
you kind of just have to look at what's the characters that make up that team. You look at
yeah,
someone like England and Owen Morgan's side that won the World Cup. They went out all out attack, and that worked for them because they kind of caught up with the way that one day cricket was going. England in the previous World Cup were playing almost Test match cricket, so they
yeah.
came up with the way and getting the gun players in to play,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very attractive to watch. Look, as I said, I'm a purist in the sense that I love Test cricket.
Yeah,
I think for me that's number one, and that should always be the pinnacle of the game. So when you talk about that, I would always hope that that is number one, like Ashes cricket over World Cup, in my opinion, just. But it doesn't mean I don't love one day cricket. I
mm,
completely respect and enjoy 2020 cricket as well, because there's always an audience that you have to, there's a responsibility for everyone involved, whether it be you and I talking about the game or club players or broadcasters, that you want to grow the game. You don't
yeah,
want to get to the stage where in 15 years that the game just fizzles out in like certain countries. Obviously, in India, Pakistan, and England to an extent, you would say that wouldn't happen. Australia as well, but you look at countries like West Indies, New
mm,
Zealand. You know, there is a slight responsibility that we need to ensure that the game keeps growing. So whatever it is an entertainment business as well. So you do have to you do have to buy into one-day cricket, 2020 cricket as well. But
Yeah.
a way that I don't really have a thing in terms of the way a team should play, etc. I just say Test cricket should be the spirit of the game should always be upheld, and Test cricket, in my opinion, should always be regarded as the pinnacle of the sport.
So there are several things to unpick here. So one question I generally pose towards another guest I had on the podcast recently, and he's a journalist as well, and he's actually working on a book on Mahendra Singh Dhoni right now. And I asked this question to him that, so you're talking about, let's say, the different formats of cricket. Do you feel that with the propagation of T20 cricket and T20 leagues around the world, the newer countries who are getting, let's say, introduced with the sport will have that sort of perception of cricket, that it has to be fast paced, it has to be quick overs, and that sort of a way that it should be played. And as a result, maybe we would have an influx of T20 players and not as many test specialists or one-day international players. Do you feel that would sort of happen? And then maybe, if it's probably very early to say this right now, we could have, let's say, India having 3 sets of teams, a T20 team, a one-day international team, and a test match team, which are specialists in their own right. Do you see that happening?
Well, to an extent, that's already happening at the moment.
Yeah.
I know that this year might be a bit different given the whole crisis, but in the England team, they played a test match finished on the Wednesday, and then the Thursday the one-day team played. They're 2 different teams. But you see people now taking white ball contracts only. Look at Adil Rashid at the moment for Yorkshire. He's got a white ball only contract. Alex Hales, a white ball only contract. So specialists are already happening. In terms of different countries, etc. Look, in my opinion, if you get a country like China playing T20 cricket, that's only going to help the game.
Right.
So I'm all for it. The more people playing the game, because once you get them in, then there's a chance for them to be exposed to the longer form 50-over cricket, test match cricket. But you need to get them in. So I'm for it.
But Neel, don't you feel something? So if you know about what happens in Hong Kong, they sort of have a T10 format that's played there. And from some of the people who live there, I've spoken to them, and they say that the people who were introduced to the T10 format, they almost find the T20 format too long in that sense, that they can't really wait for 3.5 hours to see a game pan out. And that's the way they want to play cricket in that sense. So that's sort of the angle I was posing it with.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult. I'm always think my view is always that if you get people to watch the game, there's a chance that there is a chance that then they can kind of buy into the other forms.
At least in my view, I feel we have to make Test cricket more accessible at an early to these developing countries, cricketing developing countries at a much earlier stage. So we've seen with Afghanistan, they may have a really great T20 playing side with the likes of Rashid, etc. But when they played India in a couple of test matches back home in India, they couldn't even play for more than 2 days. And that simply shows not that they're bad cricketers, it's just that they haven't been playing the format enough to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, look, as a country like that, they probably need to. It just comes to it. When you look at like Bangladesh as well, it has taken time, and even still to this day, they probably don't compete as much as they should or they would like to in Test match cricket. But results are getting better. There is a process. There is a theory that like those countries should be playing amongst other kind of incoming countries. For example, Afghanistan as Ireland, for example, would be a much more competitive. It's much more beneficial for both.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they've got this Test Championship in place as well, just to kind of get bit more on Test match cricket and making if a series is already done, putting a value on each Test match as well. That's good.
True, but don't you still feel like, I mean, this goes into the politics of cricket in that sense? And there's a great documentary out there. I think it's The Death of a Gentleman, made by Jerome Kimpel, which actually goes into how cricket is run basically, and how the 3 major boards, the BCCI, the ECB, and Cricket Australia, really want to sort of maximize the amount of times India play England or India play Pakistan in terms of the revenue pool in that sense. And obviously, we have romantics like Sachin coming out and saying that he would like a 32 team cricket World Cup. But I mean, yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how could we propagate? You're talking about introducing T20 leagues around the world, but I mean, do you really feel like, yeah? First of all, what are your thoughts on the documentary?
Oh,
If you've
look,
seen it,
but I have watched it. It's very good. Look, it's like anything that you do watch, it is one side of a story.
yeah, yeah,
So you can't take everything that is in there as gospel, but it was very interesting to watch. Very well made, produced and researched and all that kind of stuff. Um, it was interesting to see it, but look, you don't even need to watch the documentary to know that
yeah,
BCCI, uh, they run the world game in terms of cash.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you look at broadcast deals, everyone wants to get the India Test match series. Everyone wants to get because of the broadcast money.
yeah, yeah,
Everyone knows that, right? So a Test match against India is going to get you in more revenue than a Test match broadcast deal with New Zealand. So you want
mm,
to, and in there, you want to maximize 4, 5 Test matches, 5, 6, 7 one-days, the 3 T20s all in one, because then you're going to get the full package. So
right.
in that sense, no, like that's no secret. Um, but yeah, like it's just it is a difficult question in terms of kind of getting other countries involved in the game. But it's just something that, I don't know. That's why I think that something like T20 cricket is a good way in.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm posing this towards you because you said you are a purist in that sense, and I do, and even I do want to preserve the tradition of Test match cricket in that sense, and international cricket too. But when we see things like the IPL, because of the IPL, there are several international tournaments that are being cancelled just because the BCCI can play 2 IPL tournaments in quick succession. I mean, those are the kind of things which make me consider to say that probably this isn't the best way of running things. I recently saw this tweet which said that the ICC's position of president is vacant and maybe Saurav Ganguly should step in. And then there was a very witty response by someone who said that why would he take a downgrade from head of BCCI to walk into head of ICC? So yeah,
Um, look, it's a difficult one. I don't know. I don't know what to say on that subject.
right.
Uh, look, as I said, like India kind of run it in terms of cash, and they have a huge say in scheduling. That's all I can say,
Yeah,
really.
no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, was I really going to go with this in that sense? Oh yeah, yeah. So another sort of question I generally ask people who are working in cricket and writing about cricket is that. So I'm a big football fan, and you mentioned you are a big football fan yourself. And so you talked about, let's say, Adil Rashid as an example, and then he's. I don't know if it's changed, but at least from last year, what I heard was that he was only going to play white ball cricket around the world and then play in different leagues around the world. Maybe it's changed. I'm not sure.
Look, I don't know what his position is globally, but I know in the UK his contract with Yorkshire is
Right.
white ball only at the moment. I think I don't know. There's a little bit of talk at the moment that they want to try and get him playing a little bit more red ball cricket because
Hmm.
he's bowling so well.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
saying he's the best spinner in the country and get him in the longer form side. But I think at the moment I don't know what he's at the guys globally, but
Right.
for
Right. Right.
Yorkshire, white ball
But
contract.
even if we see, let's say, the global scheme of things, with these propagation of different leagues around the world, like the Caribbean Premier League, the IPL, the Bangladesh Premier League, and so many different leagues around the world, do you feel that it is likely that cricket will probably move to a format that football has, maybe, so that the IPL teams, the CPL teams, almost become entities on their own, and these players play much longer for these clubs, these franchises rather, than for their international teams?
Um, it's a difficult one because look, I don't know. It is difficult because if I'm just thinking, look, an IPL is over a 7 week, what 6, 7 week,
Yeah,
isn't it?
7
Tournament.
weeks. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, what CPL probably, what was it? 4, 5 weeks was it? That just
Mm-hmm.
finished. Look, it's seasonal as well. I don't know, like the whole structure of the whole sport, and like you're then going into the realms of Kerry Packer and the World Series and all that kind of stuff
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a few years ago. So I don't know. I think at the moment you look at all the top players in the world and they're leading the way. You look at Virat Kohli, Steve Smith, Joe Root, Williamson. You know, look. Let's talk about Virat. He's India captain, and you ask him what would he rather do? Play for RCB or play in a Test match for India? He's gonna say he said it all along. Number one in the sport is Test match cricket. So if he's saying that, we've all got a chance that the longer form will be preserved.
See, Neil, as much as we love Test match cricket, it could also simply be because he wants to preserve Test match cricket, and he's probably saying that that's why. And maybe the format isn't existing right now. Because I think if you ask the same question to a footballer, maybe if you ask the same question to Jordan Henderson or someone like that, he would, in my opinion, at least I would say that he would probably be more happy winning something like the Premier League with Liverpool than maybe a World Cup. Probably that's pushing it, maybe. But do well in a competition with England. It's just because of the fandom that's associated with those sides. Obviously, I understand the structural change it would require because, as you mentioned, that it's totally domestic in the way these players are pooled and picked by these IPL teams or the county teams because there'll have
It's
to be
going
a
to take
change
a
in the
long
Ranji
time.
Trophy system. Yeah,
It's going to take a long time because, look, as I said, geography's it plays a huge part. The IPL is the biggest franchise tournament in the world, but you're not, in this current stage, I would probably say you're not going to get for like you look at the Premier League as a nine month
yeah,
league.
yeah,
You're not
yeah.
gonna, you're not going to get the IPL for 9 months. You're not going to get players at this stage. Look, things might evolve in like a few years' time, 10
Mm-hmm.
years' time, but you're not going to get the likes of Pollard moving over to Mumbai for 9 months of the year. You're not going to get Butler going to Rajasthan for 9 months. So geography's got to play a huge part in it. I think the appeal is the big bucks. You go in there for 6 7 weeks, get £1 million, do your thing, and then you can also represent your country. I think that's a huge part of it as well. The carrot for the players.
Right. So, I mean, being based in the UK and covering sport in the UK in that sense and cricket in the UK, I have to ask you about the new competition that's being propagated in England. What are your thoughts on the 100 ball? What are your thoughts?
Look, the 100 it really divides opinion in the UK. A lot of people are against it because they're worried about what it does for the county game,
Right.
and in terms because it is a difficult question to answer because I'm always in the sense that I do like the county system because as I said it always because as I understand the system, it's the academy system. You go through the
Yeah.
ranks,
Yeah.
and there's a pathway to the top. However, I'm also completely understand why the ECB are trying this in the sense that they want to appeal to a new audience. It was going to happen a year after a home World Cup where fan levels were skyrocketed given England's World Cup success. So everything was in place. You had it on domestic TV as well. So in that sense, even though I want like the longer form, the county structure to remain, I also completely understand that you do need to appeal to a new audience. And as I mentioned earlier, that is key for the game to continually going. Because if you get someone in via that system, you've always got a chance for them to convert into understanding the longer form and more
Mm,
traditional side of the game. So that's just my
right.
opinion.
Do you feel that in a way they wanted to, let's say, reach a larger audience? They've complicated the sport even more. So with the way the sport is structured, so they said that probably it'd be better to target women and children who aren't as passionate about the sport or aren't well versed about the sport as of the other groups are. But then the way they've probably structured it is probably more difficult to understand for the general person.
Look, I don't even know how like the 100 works. To be honest, I'm going to completely understand. Like, completely honest with you. I
See,
think,
exactly, and you're a journalist, and you're passionate about cricket. So,
yeah,
and the whole agenda for them, at least from my opinion, was that they want to target new people, people who would, let's say, rather go to a 100 games than let's say go to the cinema or something like that.
potentially, look, for sure, they were trying to appeal to a new audience,
Yeah.
for sure, and they were going to try and structure it in a way that it meant that it was more kind of, you follow like a city, like London Spirit,
Mhm,
you follow it
mhm.
that way. So like tapping into like an audience's mindset as well. But yeah, that's kind of that's all I can probably say on that one.
Right. Um, coming back to your YouTube channel, and even your time as a journalist working for different media outlets. What are some of the interesting conversations you've had, be it on your YouTube channel or in person as well? What are some of the interesting conversations you've had with guests, which have just taken you a backseat to say that, oh, that's the way I didn't look at cricket, or maybe that's something we can consider in the future?
Look, I never kind of, I always ask some of my guests what they make of, cricket in their specific country, how the
Right.
game is developing. They have their opinions. Look, the way my YouTube channel and like the way I talk to the guests, it's just more about understanding them as people, which I try and tap into. I try and tap into that kind of niche in that sense because you can probably understand their views from 100 other interviews that
Yeah.
they've done on other platforms. So I did, like, for example, one of the very first interviews I did was with an ex-England leg spinner, Ian Salisbury, and he
Mm.
opened up completely about mental health, and I
Oh,
think
wow.
that was massive. And you get, stuff like that when you get that from your guests and that kind of human element to it. I think that's what I probably enjoy most, and hopefully the audience does as well.
How important do you feel that is? Because in every sport, really, I see, as you're mentioning, there's several interviews who sort of, with journalists, for the good or bad, maybe with the way the system is structured, they're always looking for headlines, in the sense that, oh, what's the manager going to say in the press conference? Is he going to drop someone? Or let's say in the cricketing context, in the sense that has an off spinner developed a new trick, and which they can probably write about. And it's very, at least in my opinion, there are very few outlets who actually, as the work you are doing, go into the human side of things and try to understand them as people. So how important do you feel that is in the modern day?
Look, it's, as I said, it's different. It's a different niche for everyone.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
for like a newspaper that probably rely on advertisements,
Yeah, yeah.
they need to get clicks. They need to get headlines for people to pay to go and buy the newspaper. They need people to go on the website so that
Hmm.
it gets
Hmm.
exposed to adverts. So with that, they need to get a headline which is gonna, I wouldn't say it might be clickbait, but it's something that's gonna attract someone to go and check out a controversial, a kind of bold headline. So
Hmm.
everyone's niche is different. As I said, it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, in my opinion.
Hmm.
It's just what their end outlet is in terms of, kind of, from a newspaper, I said revenue. That's why they do it. For my side of things, it's just the way I want my channel to evolve. It's kind of my style. As I said, like, different people got different styles of doing things. Like a baking channel, there's 100 out there, but there's different ways of doing it. It doesn't make one right or wrong. It's just the
True.
one that you try and choose. And as long as your audience understands that and they get
Hmm.
value from it, I think that's the key. If they're getting value from anything, they'll always come back and want more.
So have you heard about the Athletics? So the Athletic are like this.
Yeah, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, yeah. So do you see? Okay, just for the viewers, the Athletic are sort of a platform who take a different approach to journalism in that sense, and they've recently started off in the UK with football. I'm not sure if they started with other sports, but they go into long form journalism and look at things that. So if you are a fan of a specific club or a specific player in that sense, they would try to get stories out which you wouldn't get in the general landscape of things. Um, and that's actually done really well in terms of how many journalists have got on board, and the reputation of journalists as well, very well reputed journalists who've been working in the sport for several years. Do you see that as an opportunity for cricket? Maybe the Athletic would approach cricket after a point, because we've seen the success of Athletic in the USA. So do you see that happening in cricket?
Potentially, look, they're obviously focusing on football in the UK. They're doing a lot of American sports, aren't they?
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
believe. Look, there's obviously an opportunity. there for someone to potentially come in. But it just depends how they want the channel to go. Like you look at
Right.
someone, different broadcasters. Look at someone like DAZN. You know, they're
Mm.
focusing a lot of like their subscription-based channel as well. They're focusing a lot on boxing and American sports. They've got, you know, rights deals around the world in terms of football, but they've not tapped into cricket at the moment. So it might be different issues in terms of like the way like contracts are tied up at the moment. They might see
Right.
like it as an opportunity in 2 years' time or whatever. But like if you talk about the Athletic, you know, they've the reason why they're able to get these kind of in-depth stories is they basically picked and choose the best journalists, which have
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
insight connections, yeah, which is enabling them to get inside scoop. For example, there is a BBC there was an ex-BBC journalist, David Ornstein,
Yeah.
who I don't know what I have got no idea what connection he's got with Arsenal. He is able to get breaking news, and basically I would say 90% of stories he breaks about Arsenal
Mm.
is probably true. And they brought him on board with the Athletic. So everything he breaks about Arsenal is a lot of people, it does grab a lot of people's attention because think about the
Mm.
Arsenal global fan base. And you got this guy who's got a reputation of basically being, you know, the oracle, as people call him, you know, uh, so that's kind of they're very smart now. There's like in the boxing world, they've got Mike Coppenfield. I forgot his exact surname, but again, he's very inside
Mm.
with a lot of
Mm.
promoters, and he does get these kind of exclusive stuff, which means that people are actually paying to read to know that it's basically gold.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of the way they strategized it. But in terms of cricket, you know, you would like, you know, from my perspective, in terms of the game growing, you would want the more written about the sport, the better. The more
Yeah.
eyes on it. It's just the way. If you talk about the athletics specifically, it's just the way that their kind of business is evolving, and hopefully down the line they will move that niche as well, or expand the niche into cricket. But at the moment, you can just see it's a new kind of platform. They're obviously building their audience, and
Mm-hmm.
they're focusing on areas where they know that people are going to click because they've got the people in place who've got
Yeah.
the inside staff that's going to produce quality content that people are, you know, going to be engaged with.
So you mentioned that, in your opinion, there isn't a right or wrong way of doing journalism. It could be in a way that if a newspaper publication wants to sell headlines, and that's all right. Or so if someone wants to do a deep dive, then that's all right as well. Is there particular journalism you enjoy? Is it maybe what you want to probably write about? Would it be long form journalism? Would it be let's say for some of the biggest publications, be it whatever kind of story? Like what is your take on journalism? Like how do you see yourself working in it?
Look, as I said, I always go back to the same thing. You always got to kind of do you in terms of your style, and even that means working for a big broadcast. As I said, I've done writing for Sky Sports,
Hmm.
boxing. It doesn't mean you obviously you've got to. There's a style in the sense that you want to promote their like fights that are going on, but your writing style is you still unique to yourself. If you're writing
Right.
a preview about a fighter, it will still be in your style. You're not going to
Hmm.
write anything controversial in the sense that because you've got to still appeal to the end audience, but it's still going to be in your style. So I always go back to that, and that's the way I view journalism, in the sense that I always try and, as I say, I always try and give value back to the writer, to the viewer, and I think that's always key, and that's always my philosophy. If you're giving value back, and it goes back to the whole content creator thing, and I've talked to various mentors, etc. The biggest problem people have is making selfish content as opposed to content that is for the viewer, and
Hmm.
it's a mindset switch. And perhaps when I started my YouTube channel, I was making content that wasn't, you know, what it was just doing your research, you're doing everything, but then you're just putting content out there without actually thinking, what do people want to listen to? What do people want to hear? What do people want to invest their time in?
Right.
So that's how I view things. It's the mindset of switching out of getting out of making selfish content. And selfish does sound like a quite a strong word, but you do need to make that switch in your head and understand what do people want to invest their time in. Time is money. People don't have time anymore. So if you're asking them to invest their time in you, in terms of watching their content, watching your content, listening to your content, reading your content, you need to ensure you're giving value back to them. And that's difficult. And that's why people succeed, and people you see pop and do well. That's why they're here. And
Mm,
there's a lot of other people here. It's just making that switch. And once you do make that switch, it's also about being consistent with your content, being regular, and being patient. Because a lot of
yeah.
people fall because they're not patient enough. You got to understand that I did my YouTube channel, started in November. I'm very confident in the fact that for 2.5 years, probably nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you need to understand there's a process. That's just my view on things.
So just going back to the athletics model and how they sort of run things there. And when you touched upon Ornstein, and I think that's very similar with the other journalists. So I support Liverpool, and they have James Pearce on board. They have Rafa Honigstein for German football. They have James Horncastle for Italian football as well. So these are big names. And the way, at least from what the journalists have spoken about and how they sold, how the athletics sold them the dream, was that you can still do the journalism, but have a lot more time. So James Pearce talked about his whole routine of going to work, going to, let's say, a game, and just observing the particular facets of the game so you could write a match report. Well, that's great for some people who aren't able to attend the game, but it just comes back to the fact that if he has a week or two to spend, let's say, focusing on a particular facet of the game and explore that in a larger depth, then maybe that's adding value to the consumer base that actually want to hear those kind of stories. And coming back to this idea of value in journalism and print media, etc., like, do you feel a subscription based model is the way to go forward? Because a lot of these stories that are told in the Athletic, not a lot of them are writing for their recognized papers now. And the only way for us as let's say football fans or sports fans to get information is by subscribing to the Athletic. So do you feel that's something that's healthy, or do you feel that we should still at least have these recognized authors write for their recognized papers?
Okay, first question. Do you subscribe to The Athletic? Do you pay for it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, is it because I'll flip it back onto you then. Why do you pay for it?
So it's as I mentioned, it's about the value. So I really like Rafa Honigstein and the stuff he does. I really like some of the other things, and I really enjoy long form journalism. And I feel that the Athletic are a great place who actually do those kind of things, be it in a football context, and touch about stories which aren't
Yeah.
being looked at as general media.
So, for example, you're the target audience that they're appealing
Right,
to.
right.
You're the exact person that likes that kind of content, gets great value from it. It's just their model. Look, I don't know too much about who's backing it and stuff like
Mm,
that. You got to understand that stuff like this when you make an initial thing, unless they, I don't know, as I said, I don't know their model, so I don't know
yeah.
if they're initially going to be making a loss, and then, with the understanding with their business plan being in X year, they're going to get this amount of subscribers, we're going to pay this amount. So it's
Mm,
just their model. But in terms of audience, you're the kind of people that they're trying to appeal to in terms of subscription base. Look, I don't really have too many opinions on the whole subscription to another, because it's
right,
just it's
right.
a different form of content. It's like in other forms of content, people have patrons where
Mm-hmm.
you pay for it, and for example, there's stuff on there where you might get it first before your, like, a certain audience might get it first if they pay for it, and it goes on like a YouTube channel or an audio form like a week later, or there's an interview on there which is unique to a specific audience. It's just the model that you want to follow. I don't really have too many opinions on that, to be honest. It's just the way they see their business evolving.
Mm.
And yeah, so I don't really have too many. I don't see anything wrong with it if that's the way they want to form their business. Because at the end of the day, it is a business.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah.
understand.
No, I totally agree with that, man. So, I mean, the IPL is fast approaching. It's under a week now. Do you have any predictions for the IPL? Like, are you looking forward to it? Are there particular sides you're excited to watch?
Oh, look, I'm always excited about the IPL. I love the razzmatazz. I love the glamour. I don't. I can't sit here and say that I've got like a franchise that I could like love and die for. You
Hmm.
know, I do. Teams. The teams that stand out in my head are like Mumbai. They
Yeah.
got Rohit. It's probably the one that the one Indian player I really love at the moment. But they've also I've also interviewed a couple of Mumbai staff as well, so you kind of have that slight affiliation to them. Aditya Tere, who's the reserve wicketkeeper,
Yeah.
and James Pammon, who's the fielding coach. Very nice man, both of them. Very nice men, both of them. So yeah, it was great to get their insight, but also Rajasthan Royals. So they've got a huge English influx as well with Stokes, Butler, Archer. So yeah, and I also I've done a couple of films with the Academy director in the UK. So you kind of have a slight affiliation to them, but in terms of predictions, you can't really see past Mumbai uh, or MS Dhoni and Chennai.
No, so that's really interesting because I go to university in the UK, as I previously mentioned, and the English friends I speak to there, they say that they really follow the IPL, but as you mentioned, they don't have the franchise that they associate themselves with. It often becomes a sort of thing, as you're mentioning. If there are an influx of Englishmen who are playing for a particular side, let's say in this case, the last few seasons, it's been Rajasthan, they sort of
Yeah.
associate themselves to vote to cheer for Rajasthan in that sense. But I mean, um, like going on to this whole franchise based model, like don't you feel like what would it take for these IPL teams to become, like, let's say, Premier League teams, to have, let's say, fan bases? Even if I am sitting in, let's say, India, I still support Liverpool really, really. I follow them almost every game of the season, and I have this real affiliation for them, even if I haven't really ever been to a game. If that is a sort of case like that.
I really think the most difficult thing about the whole mindset of franchise is that the players that play there aren't unique to that team.
Right.
So you mentioned Liverpool there that you support. Jordan Henderson, you're not going to go and see him then play in the American League for
Yeah.
Miami, whatever it's called now, and then come back. And then how would you feel if he's then going on loan there, then comes back, and then
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
that Premier League starts 2 weeks after Serie A, so they got 2 weeks, and he goes and plays for AC Milan, and captains them, and like scores and kisses the badge, and then goes off for a week later. Say he was on loan there for a week, and then goes to the Greek league and plays for Panathinaikos, and then comes back to Liverpool. Like, do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
for a franchise, because because the players aren't specific and unique for that team. I think it's difficult. It's a difficult mindset for a specific audience because some will still love it, but
Yeah.
I think for others they'll find it difficult. And coming from like my perspective, other people might have a different opinion, but I say like I'm a football fan as well, massive football fan. So that kind of thing of one of my players that I support then going to play for different clubs around the world
Mm-hmm.
and then coming back to us, it's difficult. So you kind of have to go there, look at the tournament, love it in that 6 7 weeks, and then that's that. That's just me.
Yeah.
I don't,
No,
I don't know. People are
I,
different. People are different.
no, I totally agree with that point in the sense that, and that's why they have these associations that that Dhoni is only Chennai and Chennai is Dhoni, and the same with Raina. And there are a few players in these few franchise teams like Virat Kohli, AB de Villiers, who have stuck with these franchises for so long. It would almost be alien for us to see them in another shirt in that sense. And that comes
Yeah.
back to the same point you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the gun players in
Yeah.
India, I would say like they are like predominantly stick with the right to the same team. But then you look at say Butler, he was in for Mumbai, then he's gone to Rajasthan. You look at
Mm-hmm.
Brent Bolt has just changed. Yeah, I'm trying to think of others. Do you
There's
see
so
what I'm
many. Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah. There's
many.
so
There's
many.
so many.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many. So that kind of loyalty towards like you want the players to be loyal. Think about in football, a player leaves your team for say Robin van Persie left Arsenal to go to Manchester United, even though he scored so many goals for Arsenal, helped Arsenal get Champions League for a couple of years, just basically single-handedly. But he's gone to Man United. No
Yeah.
one
You
cares
just
about
can't
it.
see it. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
discard. people, you speak to Arsenal fans, they hate the guy.
Yeah.
Do you see? That's what I think. That's why probably like a franchise team for some people they'll still love it, but for others they'll find it difficult to kind of see it as like the whole Premier League thing. You die for that club franchise.
It's there's this other aspect that as you're talking about, it's only a 7 week tournament in that sense. And you don't really get to really build a lot of connections with your team if they are only playing for 7 odd weeks, just 14 games in a season, and that comes for a couple of months and then you forget about it and concentrate on international games. I think that also plays a massive factor when we are looking at these IPL franchises.
Yeah, of course, it's the time frame as well. But then, as we talked about before, to get it longer is difficult in terms of you need players to commit to like living in the country for longer, and then as I said, in terms of then you're talking about other forms of cricket, and yeah, we've already chatted about all that. So yeah.
So like often cricket fans when other fans who know what cricket is maybe but aren't, let's say, as well versed with it, when they ask about cricket and why, let's say, cricket is such a traditional sport and is so loved in that sense, they often say it's because it's the purest way that sport should be played. When you are watching test match cricket and you are watching a bowler spell for 5, 6, 7 overs and try to play mind games with the batsman, that's what it is. It's the grid that the batsmen have to be there on the crease and just stick it out there if it's a sticky patch in that sense. Like, I mean, do you see that sort of I don't know, love for cricket or that sort of, as you're saying, you could actually sit down to watch a proper test match, but with the way cricket is being channelized, there are few and few people who can actually do that. Like if you watch a test match in India, at least it's different to England. England at least test matches are still there. The people who come in to actually watch test matches. In India, it's only really a T20 game, even sometimes, that there are actually viewers who come in. Like, why do you think that is? Is it just because of other ways we consume media nowadays?
Of course, yeah. There's other ways you consume media. B, I did an interview with ex-India player Deep Dasgupta, and he was
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
how, you know, I think that, am I right? I don't know. He was saying that a test match in India will start at like 9 a.m. or something. Or
yeah,
if this is slap bang in the middle of the day, it is difficult in terms of work. I know in UK, we're probably like, and Australia to an extent, we're probably the only countries around the world where we'll still, in England, you can't get a ticket for a
yeah.
test match unless you book in advance. You can't predominantly just rock up on the day. But as I said, I think it's different ways that you're consuming media. Even though there's not people in the ground, I'm sure people are still following what's happening in a
But
test match in India.
true, that is true. But then I was speaking to this journalist as I previously mentioned, and he said that the way we are consuming cricket as well has changed. So several of these Indian fans, even if they are watching a test match, it's through their Crick Buzz app or it's through their
Yeah,
Crick Info app, and maybe that's
I
not the
agree.
yeah, maybe that's probably not the way you fell in love with cricket in that sense of actually watching them just fight it out for 5, 6 overs and see where it takes them in that sense. Also another question I sort of have is that why do you feel that England have been able to preserve this tradition of Test match cricket? Is it solely because of the Ashes, or what do you think? Why do you think that England gets people in?
That's a good question.
Because if you see, India loves cricket as much as England, if not more, in that sense. But it's just that their sort of love is channelized in different ways and how they actually approach the sport.
Look, that's a good question. That I don't really know the true answer to be honest, because I don't even know. In terms of England, look, you go to like a county game and there's no one there.
Yeah,
But then
yeah,
you go to England, you go to like the England international matches, whether it be Test, one day, T20, they're always packed. So it's always kind of, in my opinion, it's probably seen as like an event. You're seeing
right.
it's like going to a concert. You're seeing the top level cream of the crop. So it's probably the way it's probably marketed in people's minds and people understand. So I do say that people don't go and watch county cricket, but then there was a stream the other day for one of the county games and people tuned into YouTube and it was about 50,000, 60,000 people. So there's still
Yeah.
interest in the sport, but in terms of that level. but they probably just see as international cricket as an event, a concert that they go
Right.
there and see the elites perform their art. That's probably, I don't know. I don't really know the true answer, just my opinion.
So yeah, I think when it comes to cricket, I feel that there's a difference when it comes to facilities as well. So it just becomes a little more cumbersome to watch, let's say, Test match cricket in India with the seating facilities and that sort of stuff. But another thing I wanted to touch upon with the aspect that you mentioned about streaming and make it more accessible, let's say if it's streamed on YouTube or something like that. So I also watch a lot more football. So Dortmund have also started doing something similar. They put up their preseason games on YouTube, and it's much easier for the fans to watch the games. I feel it becomes easier than, let's say, driving down to the stadium and actually getting a ticket, sitting down and actually investing your time to watch that particular game. If it's on YouTube, you know that you can watch it for half an hour, maybe go do something else and come back and watch it again. It just makes it a little more accessible in that sense.
Yeah, potentially. As I said, again, as I said, people might think, people, as I said, time is of the essence. So they might want to dip in and out of it. In terms of going to the ground, they might want to go for one day of one test match in one summer. So
yeah, as you're saying, it becomes an event almost to say that it's an outing as such. Do you see boxing moving towards that sort of an element? Because I'm not much of a boxing fan. I don't really have a lot of knowledge, but you cover boxing and you've written stuff on boxing. So at least what the sort of attention that came towards me in terms of boxing was the classic YouTube match that happened a few months back between KSI and Logan Paul, if you've heard about it. And that drew a lot of attention. And that was a bigger event than some of the other professional boxers who were performing on the same night. What are your thoughts on that particular match and just boxing in general?
Boxing, that particular match popped off because boxing is like anything, right? Boxing is not like anything in the sense that it's unique because you're invested in an individual and you kind of understand their story more than any other sportsman in other sports. So like you'll know Floyd Mayweather's story more than you'll know, say, your hero, whoever, Jordan Henderson, because they're an individual. They sell themselves, and it's just the mindset in terms of getting eyes on them, building up their rep, pay-per-view money, etc. That YouTube channel fight that popped is because two of them have got such huge followings.
Exactly.
People invested in them as characters, and people just wanted to see them have a slug out, and that's why, I've seen their stuff. They've got X amount of millions of followers.
Yeah.
So people are already invested in them as characters, and just to see them fight, that's why you see someone like Floyd Mayweather do so well back in his heyday, because love him or hate him, people wanted to watch him. Look at Mike Tyson. Love him or hate him, people want to watch him. They're invested in their characters, whether you love them or hate them. And that's the difference in boxing. You're really invested in the person. If you don't really have an opinion on a particular fighter, it's very difficult for them to kind of go far unless they're an absolute knockout artist that's gonna get their way to the top in that kind of level. But boxing is a lot of politics, and it's not that straightforward. So that's why there's a lot about promotion. There's a lot more kind of online video content out there in boxing because fighters want to sell themselves, and they're very happy to. They're probably the most probably the most accessible sport out there. Forget cricket, forget football. Box. I would say if you really wanted to say for example you started your own boxing channel right now, I reckon within 6 months you could probably get the heavyweight champion of the world, which is just two of them at the moment, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. I reckon you could probably interview at least one of them within 6 months. But in cricket, you're not. I would say you might have to wait 6 years to get Virat Kohli. That's what it is. Yeah.
Do you feel that's a good thing for boxing or a bad thing? Because I heard a couple of interviews of people who've been working in boxing and reporting boxing for a couple of for a large amount of years. There were two camps that I feel like most things. So there was one camp who said that it's great for boxing if it gets more eyes on the sport. Doesn't matter what level, at least we're still getting more eyes, and that may trickle down into the professional game. But then there was another thing saying that we simply cannot have something like this because this isn't how professional boxing should be done. And just because these guys are influencers doesn't mean we would have them as the pay-per-view in that sense. Would you
No,
fall
so
under
one
a particular camp?
yeah. No, I completely understand. 'Cause I'm pretty much like I would say I'm a hardcore boxing fan, and what they're doing is not like the purest form of the art. However, you look at like a promoter who put that on, Eddie Hearn, and you listen to his
Yeah.
doing it, and it completely makes sense in the sense that you're putting on a platform, and the undercard fighters are going to get huge exposure. You had like a world champion in England, Billy Joe Saunders, on the undercard. You had all the who would not have been on that kind of LA platform those two are
Yeah.
fighting. All the other youngsters that are going to probably make it to the top eventually, like fighters like Devin Haney, who's like an American fighter. He wouldn't have got his opportunity to be on that kind of platform if it wasn't for them. And for their own careers, it's really good in terms of platform. Boxing is all about money for the fighters, so they would have got a good paycheck as well. So you got to look at it from that aspect. Yeah, as long as it's like a one-off event, like you don't want an influencer headlining every
Mm-hmm.
because that's gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when you could probably say it's gonna like be a detrimental aspect of the sport. But it's look, if they have a one fight a year, two fights a year, I would say three at max, like complete maximum, and it's an event and it draws people in. Look, even if like 2-3% of those people that watched that fight then stayed on to watch or tune in earlier to watch the under
Mm-hmm.
fights and fell in love with some of the other up and coming fighters, they might follow their journey and then they might convert them into fans. So, look, as long as it's 2-3 years a year max, I don't see there's a problem with it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. So there's this, I think we were talking about this earlier as well, that you almost invest in these people as characters, as you were saying. So if you know Ninja, he's the esports streamer. So there would be, he already has a large following. It doesn't matter what he does. Doesn't matter if he goes into a different sport or does something or makes a video that isn't what he usually does in terms of esports gaming. That following would still follow him in that sense. And that's the same with KSI and Logan Paul. However much we may like it as boxing fans or not, even these boxing authorities were just blown away with the sort of numbers that these guys generated for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too au fait about that ninja guy that you mentioned, but but yeah, that's yeah, the stuff about Logan Paul and KSI, they got huge followers, so really anything they do is gonna grab attention, and
So
attention's key.
yeah, yeah. So you say you're a big boxing fan as well. Like I mean, like to a novice like me who doesn't know much about the sport really, what is it about boxing that, let's say you said that, like, it's one of the, I wouldn't say probably one of the earliest sports that's out there, and even if you don't really know a lot of the personalities, a lot of these boxers, you would still, if someone just put that stream up on your laptop, on your TV, you would still be interested to see how it pans out. Like, do you feel there's this, it's inherently in us to like something that's combat based in that sense. If we can draw examples, because you've done history, maybe to the Colosseum or sort of aspects like that. That sport has always been within us. It's just different ways we sort of channelize it.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. Look, I for example, I love boxing, but I'm not massive on MMA
Right.
at all. Like really at all. I just don't. It's just something that doesn't really catch my fancy. But boxing, I see it as an art. It's probably because I'm
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
no, they're all arts to be fair, but it's boxing. As whereas I grew up just watching videos in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the way I got into boxing is because I used to just love not the actual end fight, but I used to love watching documentaries about fighters train and about
Mm-hmm.
their mindset and about their sacrifice and their training and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. And then you see them sacrifice for 12, 13, 14, 15 weeks, living like absolute monks, hidden away from family. And then you go and see the end result being the actual fight. So that's how I kind of got into it because I love that aspect of it. And then once you start watching the fights, and you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then that's how the cycle happens. So, in terms of the whole gladiatorial aspect, I'm not too sure. For some people, maybe, but as I said, like sports like
Mm-hmm.
MMA don't really catch my fancy.
Right,
Boxing, I see it as I like that form of the art of combat
right,
sport.
right. No, I feel there are probably a few things to touch upon here. Maybe it's because, as you see it as an art almost, so something that they practice, as you mentioned, for so many years and almost perfecting that art. And it's between two individuals who are just, I don't know, just world class in that particular art, and then just having them transpire that in a ring in that sense. But if I have to ask like a broader question in that sense, why do you think we enjoy sports so much? Why do you feel that we are so tribal about it, following our football teams, following our national teams in cricket, following these boxing
Competitiveness.
personalities?
It's competitiveness. It's inherent in a lot of people. I would say most people, and that's why you don't have to be competitive in terms of going out there and actually playing the sport. You're competitive because you want your side to win. You
Yeah,
want the person that you're following to win. You're a massive Liverpool fan. You really want them to win you really wanted them to win the Premier League that last year for the first time in what, 30 years. It's just competitiveness. You wanted to show your Man United friends that look, we're the top dogs in Northwest London, England. So I would say competitiveness is probably the word.
right. But do you feel that sort of then trickles down into other aspects of society as well? Like, I mean, just taking it out of sport in that sense, but our associations with political parties or sort of political ideologies as well, or in different facets of society, that we start associating ourselves with that tribe and saying that anyone who has an opposing view uh, to our ideology as such is almost cancelled in that sense. Because in sport, we can say that, yes, for 90 minutes or for however long cricket match goes on, we are invested in our teams, but maybe after that, we act civil. Maybe not in most cases, let's say if it's a massive tournament, but in aspects such as society, it trickles down into a way of living, really.
Oh, look, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not probably the best person to answer that. But in terms of like you talking about politics and stuff, that's a different realm because you would actually have to follow like what how policies and etc. change. That's probably not how
But that's
sport because that's
but
kind of
that's the
more
way with
like
sport as well, isn't it, Neil? Like you're following the English cricket team, and you really know like who's going to come in for the next game, how they're going to perform, if that particular spinner is the best to play in that particular track. It's I don't don't you see similarities in that sense of how invested you are with your particular clubs or national teams?
there's elements to that in I get what you're saying in terms of there's elements to that, but I would say like if you talk about sport specifically, kind of logic goes out the window. Because for example, if your team, if you're Jurgen Klopp, because I
Yeah,
always use Liverpool because you're like I'm not a Liverpool fan, but you're a Liverpool fan. So say Jurgen Klopp, he's put a defender, he's playing three at the back as opposed to like four, and you're like, what's he doing? But even though you don't, and you see they're losing, and he makes a tactical change, you're like, why is he doing this? You're
mm.
still gonna back him, even though like you can see it's not working. You're like, okay, he's Klopp, he
Yeah,
knows what he's doing. It's
yeah.
Liverpool. I'm not gonna turn my back on this game. Blah 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 blah. So there's no real logic when it comes to it. You still follow them kind of blindly. Whereas in other aspects, elements of logic do come into it um, in more in other aspects of life, like
Right.
politics, like other decision making. I would say.
I mean, it's probably a different discussion to be had, but I feel that even that sort of logic is trickling down. It's sort of getting. I mean, we're coming into murky waters in the sense that, as we were talking about, with this whole aspect of with the far right and the radical left, and it's a different conversation to be had
Yeah, yeah, that's so fun.
True, true, true. But there's this a question I wanted to pose towards you. I mean, as I said, like I follow football currently much more than I do cricket. There are some cricket books that I've picked up back in the day and I've really enjoyed them. But seeing that you're really so passionate about cricket, spoken to so many guests, like, would there be some books you would like to recommend maybe? It could be cricket books, it could be boxing books, it could be books about sports in general, or yeah.
Look, I don't really read too many specific sports books
Right,
because
right.
it's just just something I just don't really consume. I read
Hmm.
other stuff, it's
Yeah.
probably not relevant to your audience. But yeah,
My
in
my
terms,
so the podcast is called All Walks of Life, so don't hesitate. Go
yeah,
on
yeah,
if you have.
like you guys should whoever's listening to this, you should check out have you heard of Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so he's written a very, very good book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. And it's more about, it's nothing to do with boxing. He's a massive boxing fan. It's probably how he got the idea from. But it's just about kind of, business and his tactics. So, that's a kind of one that I would probably, it's a good one to read, I would say.
Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I hope we can do this sometime in person as well when I'm back in the UK.
Yeah,
But
no worries.
just before you go, do feel free to plug anything that you have to, your social medias, where they can find your work. Maybe, yeah, feel free.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously I'm on YouTube, Cricket Life Stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Also post stuff on Instagram, Cricket Life Stories, Twitter, Crick Life Stories, and also just done a new Facebook page as well. So yeah, man. That's where I'm at. So check
Thanks
it
for
out.
coming on. Thanks for coming
No
on,
worries.
man.
Cheers,
Great
man.
pleasure. Yeah. See
Bye.
you.
If you enjoyed my conversation with Neel Khagram, do consider subscribing to his YouTube channel, Cricket Life Stories. It's a great channel, and I've been really enjoying the conversations he's been having with different coaches and ex players that he's getting on, and just understanding how they spend their lives as cricketers. Because, as we talked about in the conversation, that's often an element that's not looked at by the general media, if I have to say. Moreover, if you'd want to follow me and my work, do consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, dropping a review/rating on Apple Podcasts. It helps me reach a larger audience base, or simply following me on my social media handles, which are as follows: my Instagram handle at Ishan Agarwal _, my Twitter handle at Agarwal Ishan _, my website/blog ishanagarwal.net. I would also like to thank Nandini Agarwal for the amazing thumbnail artwork. You can follow her on her Instagram at Nandini Studio. Thank you once again, and yeah, see you in the next one.